It was a quiet night in the sleepy town of Wrenwood. The sky was a blanket of ink, dotted with a handful of stars that flickered like dying embers. The wind whispered through the trees, rustling leaves and sending shivers down the spine of anyone brave enough to wander outside. Eliza had never been afraid of the dark. Growing up in an old Victorian house on the outskirts of town had conditioned her to the creaks and groans that came with age. But tonight was different. Her parents had left for a weekend getaway, leaving her alone in the sprawling house for the first time. She relished the thought of solitude, imagining a night of movies and popcorn, free from the overbearing watch of her parents. As the clock struck midnight, Eliza curled up on the couch with a blanket, her eyes glued to the screen. The house was eerily silent, save for the occasional gust of wind. Just as she was getting into the movie, a sudden thump echoed from the basement. Eliza's heart skipped a beat. She paused the movie and listened intently. Nothing. She shook her head, blaming her imagination for playing tricks on her. Moments later, the thump came again, louder this time. It was followed by a series of soft, rhythmic tapping. Eliza's pulse quickened. She grabbed her phone and turned on the flashlight, reluctantly making her way towards the basement door. The sound grew louder with each step, as if someone or something was beckoning her. Her hand trembled as she grasped the doorknob and slowly turned it. The basement door creaked open, revealing a staircase that descended into darkness. Eliza hesitated, her flashlight casting eerie shadows on the walls. She took a deep breath and began to descend, each step creaking under her weight. Halfway down the stairs, the tapping abruptly stopped. Eliza froze, her heart pounding in her chest. She shone the flashlight around the basement, revealing a cluttered mess of old furniture and forgotten relics. The air was heavy with the scent of dust and mildew. She couldn't see anything out of the ordinary, yet the sense of unease gnawed at her. Just as she was about to turn back, something caught her eye. In the far corner of the basement, she saw a faint glimmer of a pair of eyes reflecting the flashlight's beam. Eliza's breath hitched as she realized she wasn't alone. She backed away slowly, her heart racing, but the eyes followed her every move. Before she could react, a shadowy figure lunged towards her, knocking the flashlight from her hand. Darkness enveloped her, and a chilling laugh echoed through the basement. Eliza's screams pierced the night as she struggled to escape the unseen entity. Upstairs, the living room was bathed in the flickering light of the paused movie. The wind howled outside, rattling the windows. The house seemed to come alive with sinister intent, as if it were feeding off Eliza's fear. She could hear the whispers now, soft and malevolent, urging her to succumb to the darkness. Desperate to escape, Eliza scrambled up the stairs, her hands clawing at the banister. She burst into the living room, slamming the basement door behind her. Her breaths came in ragged gasps as she tried to make sense of what had just happened. The house was silent once more, but the malevolent presence lingered, lurking in the shadows. Eliza knew she had to get out. She grabbed her keys and bolted for the front door, but it wouldn't budge. It was as if the house itself had trapped her. Panic set in, and she searched for another way out. The windows were all locked, and the walls seemed to close in around her. Suddenly, the lights flickered and went out, plunging the house into complete darkness. Eliza's phone was her only source of light, and its battery was running dangerously low. She could feel the presence drawing closer, its cold breath on the back of her neck. With no other option, she retreated to her bedroom, locking the door behind her. She huddled under the covers, clutching her phone like a lifeline. The whispers grew louder, more insistent, as if they were right beside her. Just as she was about to give in to the overwhelming fear, the bedroom door burst open and the shadowy figure loomed over her. Eliza's phone flickered and died, leaving her in complete darkness. The last thing she saw was the glint of those malevolent eyes, and the last thing she heard was the chilling laugh that echoed through the house. In the morning, the house stood silent and empty, with no sign of Eliza. Her parents returned home to find the front door wide open, the living room in disarray, and the basement door ajar. They called out for their daughter, but there was no response. As they searched the house, they found Eliza's phone on her bedroom floor. The screen shattered. The whispers had ceased, and the house seemed to have returned to its normal, decrepit state. But the sense of unease lingered, and the darkness that had claimed Eliza remained, a malevolent presence that would haunt the house forever. Days turned into weeks, but Eliza's disappearance remained a mystery. The police investigation yielded no clues, and the townspeople whispered about the old Victorian house being cursed. Eliza's parents, distraught and heartbroken, moved away, leaving the house abandoned. Months later, the house was sold to a young couple, Jack and Lisa, who were eager to start their life together. They were warned about the house's eerie past, but they dismissed the stories as small-town superstition. Jack was a writer, and he believed the quiet seclusion of the house would be perfect for his work. On their first night in the house, the couple settled in, enjoying a candlelit dinner in the cozy dining room. The air was thick with the scent of fresh paint and new beginnings. But as the night wore on, the house began to reveal its true nature. Lisa was the first to notice the strange occurrences. She heard faint whispers in the hallway, and the shadows seemed to move on their own. Jack, engrossed in his writing, brushed off her concerns, attributing them to the creaks and groans of an old house. One night, as Lisa was preparing for bed, she caught a glimpse of something in the mirror, a fleeting shadow that vanished as quickly as it appeared. She called out to Jack, but he was lost in his work. She decided to investigate on her own, her curiosity outweighing her fear. Lisa made her way to the basement, the same place where Eliza had faced her unknown terror. She descended the stairs, her flashlight cutting through the darkness. The basement was cluttered with old furniture and forgotten relics, just as it had been months ago. As she explored, she found an old photo album tucked away in a dusty corner. She opened it, revealing faded photographs of the house and its previous occupants. Among the photos, she found a picture of a young girl, Eliza. Lisa's heart raced as she realized the girl in the photo had gone missing. Suddenly, the air grew cold, and the whispers grew louder. Lisa turned around to find the shadowy figure standing at the foot of the stairs. Its eyes glowed with a malevolent light, and a chilling laugh echoed through the basement. Lisa's scream pierced the night as the figure lunged towards her, its cold hands grasping at her. Upstairs, Jack heard the scream and rushed to the basement. He found the door wide open, but the basement was empty. Lisa was nowhere to be found, and the air was thick with an oppressive darkness. Jack called out for her, but there was no response. Desperate to find his wife, Jack searched the house, but it seemed to have swallowed her whole. The whispers grew louder, more insistent, and the shadows danced around him. The house was alive, feeding off his fear and despair. In a final, desperate attempt, Jack returned to the basement. He found the photo album and the picture of Eliza. As he stared at the photo, he realized the house was connected to her disappearance. He knew he had to uncover the truth to save Lisa. Jack spent days researching the history of the house and the events leading up to Eliza's disappearance. He discovered that the house had a dark past, filled with tragedy and suffering. It was built on the site of an old asylum, and the spirits of the tormented souls still lingered, trapped in the walls. Armed with this knowledge, Jack returned to the basement, determined to confront the darkness. He lit candles and placed them in a circle, creating a barrier of light. He called out to the spirits, demanding they release Lisa. The air grew colder, and the shadows converged around him. The malevolent presence was strong, but Jack stood his ground. He held up the photo of Eliza and shouted, "Release her! Let her go!" The darkness swirled around him, and for a moment, he feared he would be consumed. But then, the whispers grew softer, and the shadows began to recede. The air warmed, and the oppressive weight lifted. Jack heard a faint voice calling out from the darkness. "Jack, help me!" It was Lisa. He rushed towards the sound, and as he reached the far corner of the basement, he found her. She was huddled on the floor, trembling and pale, but alive. He pulled her into his arms, relief washing over him. The house seemed to sigh, as if it had finally released its grip on them. The shadows faded, and the whispers ceased. Jack and Lisa made their way upstairs, eager to leave the house behind. As they stepped outside, the morning sun bathed them in its warm light. They knew they could never return to the house, but they were grateful to have escaped its clutches. They drove away, leaving the haunted past behind them. The old Victorian house stood silent and empty once more, its dark secrets buried within its walls. But the malevolent presence remained, waiting for the next unsuspecting soul to enter its domain.